Artemis 2 update. So let's talk about Artemis 2 observing objectives. I am the deputy lead for the Earth Moon Observation Imaging Campaign. This is something that Kelsey Young is leading for the community. Let's go to our next slide, please. And so working with Kelsey over the last several years, as well as Matt Miller and other members of the internal science team, we are putting together a plan for observing the Earth Moon system during Artemis 2. As a reminder, Artemis 2 will be the first crewed mission to cislunar space as part of the Artemis program, and of course the first return to cislunar space since we last visited in December of 1972. Among the many objectives of the mission, including flying past the moon and having crew members observe it up close, are going to be proximity operations demonstration between Orion and the SLS. And so there are going to be a number of milestones across the multi-day mission that are really important for setting the stage for future success of Artemis. And so this is a mission well worth watching and engaging with as we get closer and closer to launch in September of next year. Definitely, this is going to be a trial run for successive and subsequent Artemis missions. We're going to learn a lot about how the systems work, of course, paving the way for Artemis 3, 4, and beyond. Let's go to our next slide, please, Ricky. So how are we going to fold science, SMD science, into this mission? Well, the primary basis of this science goals for the mission are going to be using crew observations, both verbal and through photographs, as well as vehicle-derived imagery. And for anybody who recalls Artemis 1 and its flyby of the moon, we did get some fairly spectacular views, not just of the hardware, but of the moon beneath it. And so we'll use these opportunities to begin to address several lunar science objectives. We draw our objectives from both the decadal survey as well as the Moon to Mars objectives. And we're going to also demonstrate how we support science in an Artemis mission. Again, recognizing that we won't have crew landing on the surface in Artemis 2, but it's a great shakeout of the fundamentals of how science is engaged directly in mission planning, execution, and post-mission analysis. We are also working very closely with public affairs to communicate the science that we want to get out of not just Artemis 2, but subsequent Artemis missions. I know that we all watched with rapt attention with Artemis 1, and I think wanted to see more engagement. And so we are, and Rachel, I appreciate the heart emoji. We're working hand in hand with our colleagues to make sure that the science story of Artemis is told not just during the mission, but as part of talking about Artemis 2. So we're very much engaged with them and very excited for the opportunity that Artemis 2 will provide for us. And again, depending on the trajectory, when the crew launches and when this all occurs, we will have some stunning opportunities to see the far side of the moon in ways that we were never able to do for Apollo. And so, this really is the beginning of a new era of lunar exploration and a new view of the moon. Maybe not new views of the moon 3 just yet, but certainly new views of the moon Artemis 2. The specific targets that we'll be identifying for crew observations and imagery are all trajectory dependent, and that all depends on the moment the rocket launches. So we're going to be developing a targeting plan that is at first flexible, covering the entire lunar surface, but that can then be tailored for any specific launch opportunity that comes along. Let's go to our next slide, please. So again, we're going back to the moon for the first time since 1972. And so we are all in on the opportunity to demonstrate what we can do with crew members from this unique vantage point. And again, we recognize LRO this year will be celebrating 15 years orbiting the moon. And so, this is not about just pretty pictures and getting on the cover of Time magazine or whatever magazines exist right now. This is about leveraging the depth of information that LRO has provided and finding those places where we can add value through crew observations. We also have to recognize that this is going to be a monumental event. I certainly don't think I have any appreciation for the magnitude of the words crew members will use as they're describing the moon and the audience that they'll have. So we have here an opportunity to literally touch the globe, the global audience, with the joy of lunar science. And so part of the training that the crew is receiving and the part of the training that Cindy Evans will talk about later on is how to communicate not just to us scientists, but to the world what they're seeing, and using this platform as an opportunity to really grow the science that we want to do in subsequent Artemis missions. We've been working with the crew to basically not only make them aware of what we can do with LRO and its data, but where their observations can really benefit future science observations on subsequent Artemis missions and guide future LRO investigations. And so we know that we have a unique opportunity with Artemis 2, and so we're taking every opportunity we have to leverage it for future success. Let's go to our next slide, please, Ricky. At bottom is a visualization from the incomparable Ernie Wright. If it actually starts animating, it will recreate a notional trajectory flying past the moon. And you'll actually be able to see potentially, and I will not try to demonstrate it through hand motions or baseballs zooming into the moon, but depending on the particular launch window that we have, the trajectory of the moon will take us an opportunity to see a fully illuminated lunar surface, as well as the moon in shadow. And so we have to, again, plan for every opportunity, every possibility for surface targets, and defining the kinds of images we want and the kinds of observations, the kinds of descriptions that we want from this crew. Now, fortunately, this crew, 3 of the 4 crew members have spent extensive time on the ISS, and so they've been well trained for Earth observations. It's up to us to now train them for lunar observations, which is a thrilling moment in our history. We're also, again, looking forward to the opportunity to learn how we as science is integrated into the Artemis missions. We'll be able to test out the science evaluation room that's being built at JSC and really provide our first opportunity to do a real good flush out of the system for an active mission. I will say that the targeting information and the types of targets that we got at the previous LSSW and Artemis orbital observation science have been critical to help us define the flavors, the kind of observations that we want to make while having crew at the moon. So let's go to our last slide here. Sort of the upshot of all of this is the classification, the categories, opportunities for investigations. Again, depending on the specific viewing geometry, we'll have an opportunity to view the far side of the moon in a way that was not done in Apollo, to observe color provinces, color variations, albedo variations. If we're flying over unilluminated lunar surface, can we detect any impact flashes? As a reminder, there were 3 specific impact flashes observed on Apollo's 16, and 17. As well as a myriad of other opportunities we have with the unique vantage point that crew in lunar orbit or flying past the moon provide us. We also have these foundational exploration objectives to, again, exercise the whole system as a whole, to test data downlink and how do we integrate data that comes from the spacecraft, from the crew, into our real-time tracking of the spacecraft. This is something that Matt Miller and Ben Feist are watching with keen interest as we learn how to break down barriers and build bridges across the entire Artemis enterprise. And most importantly is not just that we get the data, but then properly store and archive the data. And so working with the PDS to ensure that the data that we collect, whether it's crew observations through photographs or video or verbal descriptions, are all recorded and preserved for posterity in our PDS archive, something that's not been done before through crewed observations. So this is a unique opportunity. I'm very excited to move forward with Artemis 2. It'll be here before we know it. And I know that there'll be many more opportunities in the coming weeks, years to talk about this exciting mission. Let's go to our last slide, and then we will transition to the next talk. So again, thanks to Kelsey and Matt Miller for supporting all of the work that we are doing to prepare for Artemis 2.